Video games are supposed to be fun, right? That's the primary purpose of them, to give you some enjoyment. Unfortunately, some of the games miss the mark. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Welcome to the video, guys. I want to talk about some of, in my opinion, the worst games ever made. Now, there are a lot of bad video games out there, so I'm not going to be including things like movie tie-in games or anything like that. Licensed games, sure, but not things that were tied to any sort of release of other media, or games that were bad at release but got better, such as Final Fantasy XIVs and No Man's Sky. I've already made a video about that, actually, if you want to check that out. It's in the top right hand corner now if you want to go watch that. But for now, let's carry on with this video about what I consider to be some of the worst games ever made. Let's jump straight in, shall we, at number 5. And at number 5 we have the Simpsons Wrestling, which came out in 2001. Now, this was published by EA in Europe and Activision in North America, and it was just tragic. I mean, I can see what they were going for with the art style, but honestly, it just made it look like the whole thing was drawn in paint. It was simplistic and unbalanced gameplay. Also, even in 2001, the graphics looked bad. I mean, IGN called it the most horrific demolition of a license ever. Now, that's some pretty scathing criticism. And a point in its favour, to be fair, is that all the voice actors did do their own parts, rather than just sound bites from the series, and that's nice that there was actual work put into it. And I mean, seriously, you end up the characters just jump around, and it makes the Devil May Cry enemy juggling look, frankly, conservative by comparison. It's just, yeah, it's not great. Work was put in on some areas, but not others, and I think it was a cash-in. That's all it was. So that's at number 5, though. Let's go to number 4. And here we have Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric. Came out in 2014, and oh, bless Sonic. He hasn't had a good time, has he? Really? In the 3D era, HD era? It's not gone well for our poor little fast hedgehog. And this was, honestly, the worst. It was developed by a studio called Big Red Button, which was actually made up of a load of Naughty Dog alumni, so there was some potential here. People got excited about this. Unfortunately, there were numerous bugs and glitches, poor graphics, and just outside of that, even if it had been perfect, and this is a running theme with all of the games on today's list actually, is that outside of bugs, glitches, stuff like that, bad graphics, they were just bad games. They just weren't fun to play. And the level design was awful, it was overly simplistic gameplay, and also bad writing for the story. Another prominent issue was, of course, what is Sonic famous for? That's right, you've got to go fast. And this game was just stilted. And when you, on the few sections you could go fast, the frame rate would just plummet to the point that you often felt lost and you didn't know what you were supposed to be doing. Yeah, Big Red Button had potential, but honestly, this was a big letdown. It was a complete mess of a game, and unfortunately, whatever that studio do next, they will forever be remembered as the people who made Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. So there we go. That's that though for number 4, and we'll move on quickly to number 3, where we have Aliens, Colonial Marines. I think most people know this was coming. I briefly alluded to this game actually in my top 10 best-selling games of the decade when I was talking about Borderlands 3. But yeah, so this game was made by Gearbox. And, you know, Gearbox, they're quite famous. By this point, they've made the Borderlands game, the first one anyway. And that was actually part of the problem. It was an unexpected success. So they actually outsourced this game, whilst they focused mostly on Borderlands 2. Now, this game is well known for its failure and its tumultuous development cycle, which is, of course, never a good sign. It was heavily hyped, and then when it dropped, that hype evaporated. It was supposedly inspired by Aliens 2, but ended up nothing like it. It had none of the tension, it had none of the atmosphere. Oh, honestly, it was just bad. Bad level design, bad graphics, bad lighting, and let's go for the enemy AI, shall we? It was touted as the aliens, would, you know, stalk you as they do in the movies, and they were very intelligent, but unfortunately, due to apparently one typo in the code, the aliens just kind of wandered around, or would just charge straight at you out in the open, and it never felt like you were actually fighting against some sort of intelligent predator that was out to stalk you and hunt you. They just sat there waiting to be shot. And because Sega, the publisher, wanted something more akin to Call of Duty, you actually fight more human enemies than you do aliens in the game, which is... no one comes to this game for that. If you want that, you buy Call of Duty. It was plagued with technical issues, as a low quality graphics, and it just didn't meet the E3 trailer standards either. They lowered it from that, which, again, that's never a good sign. Which just means you're left with a broken mess of a game with enormous promises. Now, this was back in 2013, where the concept of like the hype train, where we got in later installments of games that ended up being awful, weren't quite as bad. But this was a letdown for a lot of people, myself included. I actually was really excited about this game, and I'm still bitter about it. Thanks, Gearbox. Right, so let's move on then, shall we, to number 2. And here we have Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing, a bit of an oldie. This one came out in 2003, and it was bad? Awful? I mean, people talk about a game being an obvious beta. This was an obvious alpha. Let's run through some of the issues. No collision detection. You could just drive through anything you wanted, including your enemy, buildings, and a lot of the times, the floor, and just fall out of the world. There was no cap on how fast you could accelerate in reverse, so you could end up going 1,000 miles an hour. You could drive straight up sheer cliffs. There was no AI, and I do not mean bad AI, I mean no AI. It wouldn't move. This was a racing game where the opposing player, computer controlled obviously, would not move. It would just sit there. Eventually they patched that and gave it some AI. It would do the race, slowly I might add, and then stop 1 meter before the finish line, allowing you to win. It was literally impossible to lose. And if you did win, of course, you'd be given your reward, which was a screen that said, "Your winner." I mean, there's more. They might need to go on, but there is more. A lot of the times you could win a race by simply reversing over the starting line, and it was just broken. It was a broken mess of a game. It couldn't even be called a game as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't even just a prototype dev kit or anything like that. It was an alpha. It was something that I don't know why they even released it in the state that they did. But they did, and it is today one of the most infamous games in existence for its ability to just to laugh at how bad it is, frankly. I mean, it's insultingly bad as a game, it really is. And I tossed it with myself whether I should put this as number 1, but I decided on number 2. So we'll move on now to number 1 though. But first, shall we have some honourable mentions, or in this case, I suppose, dishonourable mentions? Just a couple that I want to throw in. So first up, we have Sonic 06. I mean, I think I would be wrong if not including this at all. I don't think it was bad as the other games on this list. Maybe it was, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe I'll make another video including other games, but this one was just awful. Same as the other Sonic Boom, just bad level design, bad game, and it had a really weird human-hedgehog relationship, which I'm honestly not sure is legal, but you know, it was there. But let's just throw that in. So next up we have a game called Ninja Bread Man, and I'm not sure if people have heard of this one, but this one was just, I mean, it could be completed in half an hour for a start. It had no originality to it, and just did, it was a collectathon 3D platformer like Mario or Banjo-Kazooie. It just did everything worse. Apparently the developers of the game though thought it was really good and had potential, because they literally reskinned it and then resold it as a separate game with a new title 4 more times, just to rinse as much money as possible. And it literally was just a reskinned version. Nothing changed. It was exactly the same game. So, I mean, a bully for them, I suppose. But yeah, I just want to throw those two in. We'll move on to number 1 now. And at number 1 we have Superman 64, or just Superman, who knows, because the developers forgot to put the name on the box art. But we'll move into this. Yeah, that's just the start of the mess that is this game. This game was so awful, it actually broke its developer. The developer went bust after this. It was bad, yeah. There was this weird green fog that was part of the game. It was Kryptonian fog, which was supposedly to weaken Superman, but actually just limited the draw distance because the game was so awful. And even then, it barely had any graphical ability. I mean, this game came out in 1999, the same year as Final Fantasy IX, And also by this point, things like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask had been out in The Legend of Zelda, so compare the graphics of those to this, and you'll see what I mean by bad graphics. It is unbelievable that this was even released, frankly. It is broken, there's bugs and glitches galore, and the gameplay. Let's talk about the gameplay. It was literally just almost the entire game was just flying through some floating rings. And that was it. That was literally it, which was supposedly solving some sort of a maze. That was it. But even on that, that was bad because the time limits on it were so harsh. I can't really say much more because there's not much more to this game. It was awful graphics, awful AI, awful storyline, and then just gameplay was effectively non-existent. There was nothing to do. And yeah, this bearing in mind again that this came out around the same time as like the classic golden age of Final Fantasies and Legend of Zelda's, it is no competition. The fact that they even thought that this was worth people's money and that they charged full price for it is in my mind near criminal, frankly. But yeah, these days it probably would have got a Cyberpunk sort of thing and people would have sued, but it was bad, and that's my number one worst game ever released, just because it's not a game, it's pure lack of gameplay. But they, other than Big Rigs, which is the same thing, but this one paraded itself as a real full-fledged game, so that's why I'm putting this at number one. And that's it, 5 of the worst games ever made. I mean, there's plenty more, so maybe I'll do another update, more 5 of the worst games ever made in the future, but that is an idea for the future. I'll make some other videos in between then and now to save becoming repetitive first. But if you are still here, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate the support that you get. I'm a very new channel, and I'm doing my best to try and do the best videos that I can make for you guys. So if you could like the video, that would be great. If you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. I would very much appreciate it. And also, on screen now, if you want to watch another one of my videos, that would also be amazing. But thank you so much for sticking around. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, I will see you then. Stay safe, internet people.